Afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everybody who's joining in on LinkedIn Live across the world. Really excited to be here with you all today with a very special guest, Andrew Shoaff. Welcome to the Value Lab.
Sagar, thanks for having me.
Man, great to have you here, and I'm excited to chat. For those of you who are not aware, Andrew is the VP of Customer Success at Rohirrim, and is also one of our best customers at Foresight. So we decided to invite Andrew to talk about not necessarily even Foresight, but the reality and the new world that Rohirrim has been able to experience as a result of implementing value reviews that are powered by Foresight. So I wanted to bring Andrew on today to talk about how his team has leveraged this new capability and really helped transform a lot of client relationships. So it's gonna be a really interactive discussion. Please ask questions, comment in the chat. We'll be able to see your responses live on here, and I'll actually bring some comments on the screen if you all are so daring to leave some questions or comments. And we will go from there. Andrew, you ready?
Sure, let's do it.
Cool. So I'm gonna share my screen here, and we will go through a quick intro and then get into the good stuff. All righty. Let me know when you can see the screen there, Andrew.
Got it.
Okay, perfect. Cool. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about how Rohirrim was able to transform client relationships through Foresight. And to kick things off here, Andrew, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and share with the audience your story.
Sure, thank you. So again, my name's Andrew. I'm the VP of Customer Success at Rohirrim. Lord of the Rings fans, you'll probably get the reference. If you don't, check out our LinkedIn page. We do some really cool things with orc anniversaries that's pretty special and pretty fun. I've been doing professional services and customer success effectively my entire career. I often like to say that I've been doing them since longer or since before we called them professional services or customer success. What I love doing when I wake up in the morning thinking about is leading people and manage people. Customer success really happens to be my domain expertise, but really being a leader of people is what excites me the most. I live in Washington, D.C., inside the district proper. When I'm not doing fun stuff with customer success, I spend a lot of time on my bike and kind of exploring the rivers and creeks in the mid-Atlantic area.
Awesome. And I can definitely vouch for that. I've taken many calls with Andrew while he's been on his bike commuting to and from work, which is pretty sweet. I wish I could do that, but that's great, man. Love that you are able to live an active lifestyle while also getting some good work done in the startup world. We know that's always tough. Cool. So quickly about me, if you've been on this webinar before, you've probably seen this slide, but I am Sagar Shukla, co-founder and CEO of Foresight. Prior to starting Foresight with my co-founder, Nigel, I was in post-sales, customer success, implementation at Series A through IPO fintech companies. So most recently was at a company called Intap, where our team grew customer revenue from 2 million to 250 million. And the biggest challenge we had along that path was, value realization, right? Being able to proactively understand what value our customers were getting. And Nigel and I, we actually worked at the company together. We linked up to start Foresight to solve some of those problems, and working with customers globally, from Series A startups to private equity-backed companies to publicly traded companies, on solving key value problems. And outside of work, I love playing tennis, and I also love cooking and performing. I used to be a dancer back in college, so once in a while I'll get back on the dance floor, and that's fun too. Cool. So want to share with the group here, I'm going to actually go off slides for a little bit and share with everybody the story of how we got together. And this is pretty interesting and will lead into a lot of the stuff we've been working on the past couple months. But back in February of 2024, earlier this year, Andrew and I both met at a what this is. It's an MBA program for customer success managers at the University of San Francisco. And this actually is a program that's starting off and kicking off again in the new year. We'll post the link in the comments if anybody's interested, but it is a 2-year program that actually focuses on customer success as a profession. And as part of that program, they invite companies to join and share resources and thought leadership with their students. And so we met through that program. We both had interns through that program. And then following that, we ended up working together. So Andrew, I'd love to ask you, what did you, when we first met, what was the big aha moment for you in wanting to do something with value realization and Foresight?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I found that you and Nigel, your co-founder, were coming from the kind of same experience I had, which is, yes, there's a lot of tools and methodologies out there to sort of measure customer health or measure, how customers adoption of those sort of things. But the struggle that we always sort of get to, right? And I always sort of say, like, the holy grail of customer success is like that perfect QBR deck, right? Which doesn't exist. And so there was always this struggle of how I take what they're doing what they're doing in the tool and turn that into something that's actually quantifiable. Logins are fine. We all know that it's not really valuable to a buyer. And so I really found the NPS you can manipulate in all sorts of ways. There was never any really good way that I had ever found to take what someone's doing in the tool and a qualitative, like, do they not find it interesting, and actually turn that into a number that I could play back to an executive buyer. And it's something that I've had this conversation with umpteen other, customer success professional service executives. And then when you and I spoke, you came from the position of, I've been in your place, I've gone through the exact same thing, and we saw a way of addressing this, and we built something specific to exactly the challenge that the customer success professionals face. And I was intrigued at the outset, and then I saw what you guys were doing and saw the way the customer participates. And then once I saw a customer using it, I was really hooked. But it came from a position of experience, the pain that we've all gone through, that our teams go through.
Absolutely.
And really trying to create something unique out of it.
Yeah, and I think in this day and age, I was on a call earlier with a leader in the customer success space, and they were talking about there's so much pressure on the industry to prove ROI of both the function, but also the solution of the companies, right? And there's a ton of need to quantify value internally. So our teams are able to generate more revenue by retention, expansion, all that good stuff. But also, how can we tell the story for our customers' value realization? Because ultimately those two things are interlinked, right? More revenue for the company is only a byproduct of the customer getting more value. And so I remember that being a really key part of our conversation. And ultimately, that's why we started Foresight. And that's why Andrew's using our tool and work with our team on this. So let's pivot over to Rohirrim. And you mentioned Lord of the Rings is Genesis. Whenever I brought you all up, and you're on our website as a case study and testimonial, people are like, what? Are you like Rohan? Like the writers of Rohan? Like, are you serious? And like, yes, I'm totally serious. That is
our product. Our product name is Rohan.
Yeah.
After this, I go to my team's meeting. My team's meeting's called Second Breakfast.
Yes. That's awesome. I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings. And so I just love how you all are bringing that into the culture fully. So tell us about Rohirrim and some of the unique challenges that you all have, and also massive opportunity, given you are a new entrant, domain-aware AI platform, right? Selling into large enterprises. So talk to us about what are, in the context of value realization, right? What were some of the challenges that Rohirrim and opportunities that you all are facing that necessitated, hey, we got to quantify value for our buyers and do something here?
Yeah. So as you said, Rohirrim is we're a startup company where we provide a generative AI tool very specific for the RFP, request for proposal process. In particular, we're federally focused, meaning we work with the customers that respond to federal proposals. So large government contractors, organizations like that, to do this. And so we really kind of, and I joined just about a year ago, our company has been in the market less than 2 years. So we're a new player here. And because of that, there's really sort of three big challenges that we face. First, we're a startup company. And so the burden of proof in terms of providing value is entirely on us, right? We don't have 10 or 15 years of history to trade on, right? So it's simply a higher bar for startup companies to prove their worth to new customers. That's sort of problem number one. Second challenge is that not only is we're a new product, but this is an entirely new product that no one in the market's ever seen. None of our customers have ever used generative AI in the context of a proposal response before. Well, that's exciting for us. There's a huge amount of opportunity for that. What it means is that what value essentially is not self-evident. Our customers don't exactly know what value means yet because they have never used a tool like this,
absolutely.
Right? And so there's lots of thoughts of like what a long-term value, what a long-term ROI might be. but there's so much value that needs to be delivered in the interim, even before we get to that ROI, right? And so that wasn't self-evident to our customers, and it wasn't self-evident to us even necessarily, right? Like, how do we drive that interim value to prove what we're doing to customers? And the third piece is, the area of the market that we have specifically designed our tool for is the large enterprise organizations. And our price point reflects that. And so again, that simply takes the bar that we have in terms of the return that we have to provide, the value that our buyers have to see early in the process, and makes that even higher for us, right? So we're a new company, it's a new product, and we're the top end of the market. All that puts, as you said, a huge amount of pressure on us to deliver value very, very quickly to our customers.
Absolutely. And then it's one huge opportunity and challenge to quantify value from the buyer's perspective, but also be able to make decisions off of that once you have it internally, right? And I love what you said about value isn't self-evident. The other piece that I would add to that is value is in the eye of the beholder, but they have to be guided to it, right? And so the buyer is the only one who can actually articulate the value they're experiencing. They're buying it, they're using it, they're getting the outcomes from it, but they may not have the language or the vernacular necessarily to describe it, especially if you're a totally new entrant and it's a new thing, right, for everybody involved. So I think that the stakes are only higher in that world to give them a way to talk about it and transcribe it.
There was a lot when we were asking our customers early in the process. There was a lot of, well, I don't know what it is, but I'll know it when I see it. Completely understandable, right? Not our fault, but definitely our problem. So that was really incumbent on our team to understand, again, how do we put this in a language they'll understand? How do I put this back to them quickly in a way that makes sense? That was a real unknown that we walked into, just a year ago.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about Rohirrim and what stage you all are in your journey before we talk about the ways you solve this problem. So high level, what series of funding have you raised, how long you've been in business, and I think that'll paint a good picture for folks as well, contextualizing the challenges that we're talking about.
Yeah. So as I said, we've had our product in the market less than 2 years. Our founder is a technical founder. He is a natural language architect and engineer by trade. Was working with the ChatGPT guys, back in 2016 kind of thing, right? So really innovative founder on our side, but we've been in the market less than 2 years. We raised our Series A just about a year ago. And then to give you a sense of the competition, when I joined the company just about this time last year, there were 4 or 5 sort of other organizations, other companies that we would consider competitors doing something as focused as we are. Right now, there's close to 70. So we've seen the number of entrants come into our market. Expand exponentially, right? And lots of very good products out there. And so, we're looking at massive amounts of competition that creates price point, demands, that creates UI experience. So there's all sorts of things that we've got to evaluate, and we've got to make sure that our product is staying, kind of at the top of the market where we intend it to be. So there's a lot of pressure in that regard, and we are venture funded, as you'd expect. And so that obviously we have to deliver pretty serious results for our investors, as all Series A startup companies do.
Yeah, and the pressure to differentiate amongst all the competition that's going to continue to grow is massive. So you got to prove the value to your new customers, convert those pilots, convert those customers into longstanding, loyal advocates, differentiate when you've got competitors coming in, and continue to increase your growth rate. So there's a lot riding on the value, right, that you can realize.
Right. It's all the traditional stuff plus all the unknowns.
Yeah.
We just came up really kind of on our first round of renewals, and we've been very successful with that. That's fantastic. But when I started a year ago, I was like, okay, when we really start having these renewal conversations in a couple of months, what am I going to use as my primary driver of that conversation? I didn't know. I was like, all right, that's one of the things that that's why I was hired, what I was hired to do, but we didn't have a playbook for that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's when we got introduced at the right time, right, Andrew? And Foresight came at a point where we could help you start to articulate some of that value. So let's talk about what happened next, right? So you had all these challenges, you had all these big goals and ambitions to make value self-evident, to have your customers articulate in their own eyes. So then we got connected back in Q1 of this year, and our first job together was to define value, right? Build a value framework to start articulating the key value drivers of the Rohan platform. What are the key outcomes that they help enable for executive buyers? What are the workflows that your champions and VPs are needing to improve? And then ultimately the use cases of end users. So can you talk to us about the process of going through that, value framework build, and how valuable that was for you internally to start to put the rubber to the road around it?
Yeah, the thing that was really critical for me was that we had something that defined not how someone used the tool per se. And it wasn't asking someone about the tool, it was a value proposition assessment. How well are you achieving the outcomes, right? Not the workflow particularly, but like how well are you achieving the outcomes that led for you to work with us to begin with, right? I always say customer success. The purpose of customer success is make sure customers get the value that drove the decision to work with us in the beginning, right, in the first place. And so, at Rohirrim, what we really focused on was like, okay, what are the outcomes that we want to quantify? What's most important to us? And what was really helpful in the process was sitting down with you and Nigel and others at the organization. And as we sort of walked through how we spoke to value, how we spoke to use cases, how we spoke to those outcomes, a bit from a third, from almost a neutral perspective, you helped us craft those use cases, what we call a use case in the value assessment. But instead of just kind of having us do it, you have really helped us sort of like narrow the language, think about it, go, I hear you saying this.
Yeah.
Does this quantify, and some of the, you're so close to it sometimes, right? You can't edit your own work anymore. That was really helpful for us and also for you all to take your experience and say, great, I hear what you're saying. Let's think about economizing it this way. Here's what I'm hearing. Is that right? Because ultimately, we're taking this to users who haven't used our tool before, right? They haven't heard our spiel. They don't get all of this, right? And so they need to understand it right away. So, you guys were a really helpful, sort of partner, taking what we wanted to say and making it really relevant and just sort of putting it in a really succinct way. Again, sometimes you're too close to edit. And so it was a real partnership defining those use cases. It wasn't just taking the product and us putting it in there. It was you helping us really understand how to get the answers that we're really looking for.
Absolutely. And that's great to hear, because so critical to our approach and processes. We need to be thoughtful out of the gates and make sure the implementation's right and define the right value drivers, because ultimately you're going to be assessing your customers based off of these value drivers. And we want to make sure that what's going in front of them is true to the solutions that you're offering to the market. And that will change too, right? I think it's a good point to call out here that Rohan RFP is your first product. There's going to be more products, going to be more value propositions. And so that can change and evolve over time. And your value framework at an organization is your DNA. And that will also change and evolve over time. And Foresight, our job is to really help guide our customers on saying, hey, it's time to now gut check and reassess the value framework and update it, because we're hearing a ton of great feedback and commentary from customers that needs to make its way back in. So,
and we've been doing that with you guys. And as you know, we're already kind of looking at sort of that product expansion and how we do that and how do we, how we still compare apples to apples. But yeah, I mean, that evolution of it's been something that you guys have been pushing us to. And it's been part of, our partnership.
100%. So I want to show a couple of slides here for the audience to grab onto. What does this process actually look like? What is value? How do you define it? And then we're going to go back to the impact that this has had on Rohirrim. So give me a second here. I will share my screen and let me know when it's popped up for you.
There we go. We can see it. Cool. Yep.
Yeah. So we talk all about value. I think it's important to define what it is, and it's actually easier to define what it's not out the gates, right? So value is not any of these things, right? And I'd love to hear your perspective on this as well, Andrew. It's not product usage. It's not utilization. It's not CSM engagement or sentiment or support tickets. It's not your internal health score, right? Value is in the eye of the beholder, and it can only be described through your executive buyers. So this is the first phase shift that we have to work on together, and we work with our customers on, is we need to look at value from the outside in, not the inside out. How do your customers perceive it, not how do your CSMs or even you perceive it, because that's inherently a little bit biased. And so this is the framework that Andrew was talking about that we built together, is a value framework that articulates 3 dimensions of value. At the very top are desired outcomes, right? What are the core reasons why an executive buyer is looking to purchase your solution? We need to document those and make sure we are aligned on what that means for your organization. There are then business workflows that your solution will support, right? To help make faster, better, stronger, to help your executive buyers achieve those outcomes. And what's the foundation pillar to all of this are the core needs that end users and your actual users will have. So we call them jobs to be done. Your users will have needs that need to be addressed, use cases for your product. And so that's where solutions will come in, such as Rohan RFP, to address key use cases. Those use cases are going to make those business workflows a lot more faster, a lot more efficient, a lot more impactful. And then by doing that, we'll help the exec buyers to achieve desired outcomes. So the way we think about the world and what this value framework really is a structured, intentional approach to defining value through your customer's lens. Anything you'd add to that, Andrew, before I keep going?
No, it's exactly right. I mean, this is and again, it's all from the executive buyer lens, right? I mean, and that's ultimately the conversation we're having. I think that the sort of user metrics are great to end users and maybe to line managers, but when you're talking about executive buyer, it's an altogether different conversation.
And the challenge that we see all the time is exec buyers are often disengaged because they've gotten the numbers thrown at them of usage and support tickets and QBRs, right? And they get tired of it. Well, it's not worth my time. I've got 20.
And they're not a tool anyway, right? Like sometimes they're tool, most of the time, like, you know, we've all dealt with like executive buyers that wouldn't know your product that hit them in the face. That's fine. Yeah. Okay, right? Like they shouldn't have to be product experts to be able to like have a conversation about value.
For sure. And the way that, you know, you engage these exec buyers is really critical too, because they don't have that much time. They're not really logging into the solution. And so we have to meet them where they are and talk their language. And so the framework is designed to be that and be a manifestation of their worldview and what they're actually thinking about. So the next piece of this is to measure, right? Measure value against this framework and start to quantify how do exec buyers, champions, and end users actually feel about the value that they're getting across these 3 dimensions. And so how Rohirrim and other customers use Foresight is to actually send out value assessments. We're going to talk about Andrew's experience with this and the team's experience with this in just a second, but just to paint the picture, the framework turns into assessments. These are personalized questionnaires that get sent to exec buyers, champions, and end users prior to a key point in the customer journey, onboarding, EBR, QBR, or check-in, and prior to renewal. We also have customers, and Rohirrim has used it in this capacity as well, which is to help convert new pilots, right? And if you're running pilots with large entities, it's imperative to measure value pre-pilot to get a sense of what your current state's like, and then post-pilot to show the impact and the effect of your solution on the customer's business. So once you have the framework, the value assessment is the conduit and the way we capture this data, which is really high throughput, really powerful. And we get a great response rate. You know, the number one question is, hey, do people actually engage with these assessments? Answer is resounding yes. We have a 70% on average response rate. I think you all have a higher one. It's probably closer to 80%.
I was going to say, I think ours is probably closer to 80% or 85%.
That's awesome.
So the other thing here is it's not an email. Right? Emails are fine, but the assessment's not an email. The assessment is a real interactive process. It doesn't take very long, but what I found is once people jump into it, they see it, it's actually like a lot more interesting to participate in. And it's not so generic, like on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you like this? Like if I say 1 more of those, like give me a break. So I think that's a big hook here. When somebody sees it, you're like, oh, I haven't seen this before. It also, quite frankly, like it looks really professional. Like it doesn't look like amateur hour. It looks like these guys know what they're doing. This is a really well done, executed thing. It just gives credibility, frankly, to my team and to the product that we're doing this in a really professional way.
I love that. And the point about professionalization and strategic engagement is really the underpinning for this, because how many, and in large organizations where there's tons of customers, hundreds of customers, a CSM might be managing a book of business of, 3-5 million, 3 digits worth of customers. It's impossible to engage every customer. It's doubly impossible to engage the key stakeholders at these accounts. And so the value assessment is a great way to engage them in a minimally invasive way, because it only takes a couple of minutes, and it's all designed about their business needs, right? There's nothing about here, to your point, about, hey, what's your experience with our product or features and functions? It's all about business needs. And that's how we generate all this rich data. So let's jump back to Rohirrim here, and I'm going to show an awesome chart that you had actually pulled from your team. And I'd love for you to share what this represents and how the framework and the assessment ultimately led to this outcome, and tell us a story about what we're seeing here on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those like show me, don't tell me scenarios. So this is an actual slide that we share with this particular customer every quarter. And so what we do is that before a customer, sometimes we've got to go through a pilot process. As I said, we're a brand new tool in a very expensive competitive market, right? We have to deliver early pilots with customers, or when they come on, as I said, even customers who sign up right away don't know what really good looks like yet. And so we actually have two versions of the assessment. We have what we call a benchmark version that asks customers the same question, but instead of asking about our tool, Rohirrim, we ask them about their existing tools. And the questions are, how important is this to you, and how effective is your current tool tech stack in doing this? And in this case, we came up, and that gives us like a baseline metric. And what you saw on the previous slide, the answers are qualitative. It's very effective. It's somewhat effective. It's neutral. And we take those qualitative responses and turn them into a number, right? So we can give them a hard response. We can do it at the user level. We can do it at the account level. Frankly, we can do it across our whole portfolio. But in this case, we're able to show them, here's where you started, right? Here's where you were before we got there. The sort of first column or second column over you see is we do a first sort of benchmark, or I'm sorry, a value assessment, which is asking about our tool then. Now that you've been trained, now that you've had some time to use our tool, how do you see your organization? How do you see yourself using this tool? And so they were able to go back and say, okay, what's the delta between where you started and where you are right now, right? And so the real value of the value assessment is that it's not a one and done thing, right? The purpose is to do it over time. So we do it before they start with us. We do it right after they're trained and they understand they see the potential of the tool. They see the power of the tool. Then we go back 3 months later, there's an adoption period. We know that, right? And we expect that. We talk to customers about that. So we can see an improved value attainment over time. And then the dotted lines here, we're not done with where we are. We always give our customers a goal and our executive buyers a goal. Here is where you are, but we expect to be here over time. We're not done. We're not going anywhere. We want to make sure that we're putting together a success plan that allows you to hit another level of achievement. That's really valuable. The horizontal line here is the sort of average score across all of our customers. Anybody ever talk to their customers and it's like, do you want to know how well you're doing at your peers? It's what everybody wants to know, right? Okay, stack rank me against everybody else, right? It's like, that's the hook. Tell me where I am relative to everybody else. This gives us a good benchmark about, right, we weren't, they were below the average early on. That's fine. We expect that. And that first session, great. We also sort of expect that they haven't been using the tool as long as other has, but they're close to it. Now you're above it. Great. Who wants to stop once you're beating everybody else? Nobody. Let's keep going, right? And so I just sort of walked through this, but I think anybody could just look at this slide and just instantly kind of understand what we're talking about. And that's the value. I don't have to sit in a QBR and talk at people.
Yeah, and it's a story. And what I love about this, and so Andrew and his team have an amazing designer on staff, right? They took all the Foresight data, which we have visuals that show this sort of some of this stuff, but they made it look amazing. And it's so self-evident, right? I want to come back to that term because that's the goal here, is make value self-evident and make it so obvious that a customer can look at this and say, my goodness, this is awesome. I'm so glad that we brought you all in back in April. And of course, we're going to expand our relationship with you and Renew because our team is getting a ton of value and you're showing me that. And no other vendor has been able to do that for me. There's power in the process as much as there is in the results themselves, right?
Right. And the easy thing is this is like slide number 1 in our executive business review, right? And what we say is, so what we're going to talk about today, the dotted line part, that's what we're going to hear talk about.
That's awesome. And that's where the success plan comes.
What do you think? All right. What are the other things that you want to see us focus on to get us there? Suddenly it starts a discussion. This whole thing creates a discussion.
Yes. And we actually have a comment that has come in from LinkedIn here I want to show on the screen. So Kate has asked, what has it been like for your customers going through the value review the second time around?
Mm-hmm.
Great question.
Yeah. So what we're finding now is like when getting the executive buyer bought in early on is really important. It's actually something that like I ask right after we sign the deal. I've got a call with all of our executive buyers, and my ask of them, we pitch this in the sales cycle. We tell them we have these metrics and we track them. It's one thing if I ask for it. It's another thing if the executive buyer asks their team for it. So my ask of them, my only ask of the executive buyer right out of the gate is, will you commit to getting every single one of your users to respond to this? And they all say yes, right? And we end up with 80 to 90% user response, because if the executive buyer sends it out, they're a whole lot more likely to respond. But then the executive buyer wants to see it. And so what we found is that we get executive buyers calling us saying, hey, when are we going to see these again? I want to see this metric again, which is terrific.
Amazing. Yeah.
Right. And so that's, again, I don't have to pull teeth to get it. Or, I mean, and it's not always straight up. It's like sometimes we kind of stall a little bit, and that happens.
Yeah.
It's okay. And what it gives us is like an early kind of course correction signal. You know, we're 3 months in, you know, maybe the benchmark to this doesn't go like straight up. Okay. So let's talk about that. Let's see where it is. That's okay. I'd rather know early on anyway.
Yeah.
Then we can address it. So again, it just gives us proof points. And so the answer to that question is our buyers have been pretty receptive to this. We're usually, once they see it, getting a second or third one, they just want to see it. And this becomes our cadence, right? And they want to jump on because they don't have this data in the tool. Like they don't have access to this. So this is something they cannot get on their own. And this is their users' data. It's not someone I'm pulling. It's not my perspective. I'm not spinning this.
Yeah.
So it's their team.
Real objective.
It's their team, right? It's their team. It's their responses. It's their numbers. All I'm doing is giving them back their own numbers. Helps a lot.
It's so powerful. And Kate, thank you so much for your question. I hope that was you got what you were looking for there. If there's anybody else who has questions or comments, please post them here in the chat. We'll definitely pull them up and have a discussion around it. One point I want to make here before we move on to the next slide is I love how this gets you on a joint accountability track with your buyer, your executive buyer, because the number one risk for churn, and especially as companies grow, is executive buyer disengagement. We talked about that a little bit before, is if they're checked out and they're not responding or they're ghosting some of your key outreaches, you're not top of mind for them, right? When it comes time for renewal, they're like, hey, who's this solution again, right? Why am I using them? But this gets them to engage perpetually and make sure that their voice is heard, because half the battle is making sure that they feel heard and seen and doing something with that. And the final point is that in the post-sales world, customer success account management, it's so critical that we prove the way that we sell, right? And in post-sales is by proving value. In the sales world, it's all about a promise and potential. And what I love about this is quantifiably proving that your customer has received value,
right? Which
is going to, the byproduct is going to be revenue, right? I mean, more revenue, more retention, more expansion.
Right. The sales cycle is why change, and the renewal cycle is why stay.
Yeah. Yes. And you got to show them, why it's worth staying and what they're getting out of it. Great. So let's jump to the next one here in quantifying the value impact. And once again, I love your designer. I love the way you've thought about this and taken the data and told a story around it. So tell us about what's being shown here and how you use this with your customer.
Sure. And this is just sort of distilling down to the next level what we showed you in the previous slide. And so those three sort of bars, like accessing firm knowledge, drafting proposals, proposal management, those are effectively three of sort of our primary outcomes, right? And there's things within that, but of the 11 questions or use cases that we have for our customers, they break down into one of those three categories. So this is our ability to go back to your customer and saying, okay, there are three primary outcomes that we all agree are really critical here, right? Those three pieces. And then we can say, great, when you started, you were negative, you were 21 points behind the average. Where you are now, you're 9 points ahead. And where we're going to go is 20 points beyond that, right? So, and you can see even going from that top on the negative 21 to plus 20, you've got this massive 41 point swing, right? And so we're delivering a very specific value increase, right? Now, what is negative 20 versus 40, but it kind of doesn't matter because it's all taking customer responses, turning into the numbers, and then playing them back to the customer, right? And so we're able to say here, in each of the critical areas that you bought our tool for, Your team is improving in their use of it. They are above the average of all of our other customers who more or less look like you. And there's way more you can do here. Yeah. Right. And that's a really big deal. I mean, just look at this again. I don't have to talk so much about this, right? Like, it's clear where they are and yet where we're going to go. And it's the customer.
And it's the past, present, future of the customer. It's, where did we come from? Where are we now? Where are we going? And it totally incentivizes the stay motion, right? Like, hey, in order for us to truly realize our potential here and the max, like we're not even close to the limits. We got a lot of work to do, and we got to work on this together. We have a joint plan of action. We got a couple actions we're going to take. We got a couple actions your team needs to take to get that next 20-point increase in firm knowledge, because that is a big priority. You told us that as a top priority for you, and there's a huge potential to increase efficiencies there. So being able to leverage this, which naturally tells the story itself, is so powerful. And I, once again, I love how it brings the buyer along for the ride, right? This is your world. This is not us. This is not our product. This is what you told us. This is where you want to go, right? And this is all about you. And of course, when it's about them, they're going to be more engaged and listen more and be more collaborative through this process. And there's one comment, I'm not sure if this had come from your team or from one of our other customers, but it stuck with me. And it said, going through this process has turned our customers from critics into collaborators, right? Yes. And how sometimes the relationship can be adversarial, which is not what anybody wants. And obviously we're on the same team fighting the same fight, but customers can perceive that, hey, like, I know there's a renewal coming up. I know that I have to pay you more. And you're trying to give me the fluffy, soft sell here, but what's in it for me? And this totally changes the dynamic.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm having a bit of an audio thing. Hold on 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah, all good. No worries. Is it on my side? Can you hear me okay? I'll give you a second here. This is live, folks, so it's not pre-recorded.
Sorry.
All good.
Sorry about that. Let me see if I can change my audio part.
Yep, no worries.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Can you hear me?
You got me? Okay, we're good.
Good? Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Sorry about that.
All good. I was just telling folks that this is live. This is not pre-recorded.
Yeah, so sorry about that.
You're getting the real feed here. Awesome. So we were talking about how this helps you tell a story, quantifies the value impact. I want to move to the next slide here, which you had also shared graciously from one of your presentations around connecting product usage data and value, right? And so this is from our point of view, the number one proxy for value, which is not a real indicator of value, is product usage, right? People have this idea that, hey, more logins, more monthly active users, more value. But that's not necessarily the case. And what we're showing here is actual user data, which is all anonymized, of course, but comparing their login counts with their perception of value. And so the first 3 columns is data from the solution. The second 2 columns is data from Foresight around importance and effectiveness. And yeah, I'd love for you to comment on anything here. I want to make one point, but would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, this is actually something that the executive buyers love, because we go back to that first slide. We talk about how we need to get from here to there, right? What this really shows us is a success path for each user, right? And we have anywhere between 10 and sometimes there's hundreds of users in there. What we can really see here is who are the users that we actually might want to focus on, and are there role identifications in there? Like, hey, sometimes the folks in red, we expect them to be in red. That's okay, no big deal, right? Sometimes we see some really unexpected things, like people who we really didn't think were going to, they had more of sort of an ancillary participation in the function that they're in the tool. They love it, and they're finding new uses for it, and that's really unexpected, right? So that helps us basically look at expansion opportunities. Oh, are there other people in those roles we can bring in? So this is actually something that was surprised us, is how much our executive buyers love to see this, because they're interested in their individual people, right? Are they getting value? Am I getting value across the board on this? because then we can say, okay, what do we do? This gives us the ability to create a success plan, not at the account level. We can do it at the individual level. And then it helps managers, directors get a lot more involved in this, and it gives them a level of granularity that they really like to see. So it helps take that executive buyer conversation and sometimes bring it down a little bit and make it even a little more tactical. So we can say, great, next week we're going to talk to these 4 people. Let's do some more training here, or let's bring them in to see why, what they're doing is great. Let's have them talk to other people. Again, this is just a conversation. It's way better than just looking at logging. Log account doesn't tell me, right?
Yeah, you got to contextualize it.
Yeah, you put both those things together, and suddenly it's an altogether different conversation. And then this is what executive buyers want to see. I was on a call yesterday morning with an executive buyer, and we were going through this. He said, okay, talk to him. He said, okay, but next time we do this, I want those 4 people to be up and green, right? So he said, next time we do this, right? And they wanted to see those people, so they were invested in the goal.
Yeah.
Right? And then they told their people to go do it. So suddenly we have alignment between the executive buyer and us getting the kind of that mid-level group of folks, really doing it. And it all just sort of happens organically, right? It's just a conversation that happens.
And it's, you made the point earlier about getting the executive buyer on the same team as you and saying, hey, we need this data. We need these insights. Can you go top down and ensure that we get this stuff? And they're saying, heck yeah, I want to do that because I want this data, right? I want to know how my team's using the solution, how we're getting value, and ultimately for me to make the call on next year, the next renewal cycle. And for this view, it's a great way to tactically start to problem solve and figure it out. And one thing I wanted to call, I love everything you've said about how you're using this. For me, as I look at this, and this is a point that we'd like to engage with the folks on, is that just because there's high usage or low usage doesn't mean that they're always getting value. And so I'm going to call out 2 things here that I saw, which is really interesting. In the yellow section, which looks like mid-tier usage, one of the individuals reported a 41 login count, which I think is like the 3rd or 4th highest logins here. But when you look at their effectiveness, it's a 47, which is below, well below the average. But if we look at the red section now, and someone who's logged in 12 times, which is bottom quartile, they're reporting a 92 effectiveness. So independent of usage, obviously we want to get more logins and more usage and get folks more dependent on our solutions as part of their workflows and optimizing that. But there is sometimes a disconnect, a big disconnect between their perception. They might just use it a few times, but it's hugely valuable for them versus someone who might be logging in all the time and they're not really seeing the value, which you may want to focus on that more, right? And prioritize that, because if someone's spending 40% of their time in your solution reporting less effectiveness, obviously that's on their mind a lot more and can be festering and causing issues. Not saying that this account in particular is experiencing that, but that's how I'm seeing customers use this data to then course correct, as you said earlier, get that advanced warning system and improve the overall experience.
And as I said, we're a startup company, and so this is great for us. We know there's always product improvements. Or in this case, that's someone that we want to say, let's go talk to them about this, right? They're really in it. Why aren't they seeing the value of it? These are the individuals who do the best product and answer requests from, right?
Yeah.
Because they want it to be more. They're really in it. They've been in it. They spent real time in it, right? Like their opinions are credible. They've really done the work. Great. If you've done the work, we want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So again, it also helps us narrow down a long list of users who we should really talk to, right? This also really helpful for us.
Yeah, it's so incredible, and it really galvanizes engagement across the board, executives all the way down through end users. So I love that you were able to put this one together as well. Cool. So I'm gonna go to the final slide we have here, which personally I'm most excited about. All of this has been fantastic to talk about the current state and how you're using it with customers, but let's pivot now to the future state and what this data can ultimately unlock for Rohirrim as a company, right? Building on all the great work you've done with customers. So let me go to the next slide here. And it's another table. I'll talk about this, but it's a really powerful story, right? And so something that we've been working on with our top customers is actually taking all of the data from individual customers and bubbling it up into what we call the solution effect. In this case, Rohan effect, right? If you look at the last column here, Rohan's the product. What impact is Rohan having on customers? Like how well is it improving their key needs? And so what we'll read for this table, and then Andrew, I want to get your commentary on this, is we've anonymized the use cases. So all of Rohan's use cases on the left. Foresight was able to get a benchmark of when a new client signs on, what are they reporting, right? How well is that need going with their incumbent solution or with Excel or whatever it might be? So that's column 2. And then column 3 is after they've used the solution for 3 to 6 months, what are they reporting there? And then ultimately the delta is the last column. So it's awesome to see that the impact has only been positive across all these use cases, right? 10 key use cases. Rohan has positively impacted each one of them, with the first one nearly a doubling in how they perceive value, over just a couple months. And so I think this is a great visual and use case to take back to leadership teams, even to boards. Yep. I think you presented this in the board meeting before. So talk about how can we leverage this data to ultimately align our go-to-market motion and understand where we play best, right? So this is where I get most excited, because it helps to become a North Star for the market and a voice of customer to start to align each function.
We talked so much about the value of Foresight to kind of the customer success team, but this is where the information is really validating to our product and engineering team. Like, our product team loves this, right? Because in an early company, we're able to articulate what within our right, a lot of pieces in there where customers see value, so where is the biggest opportunity for us to help that out. Ultimately, this is what our customers are telling us, not our perception of it, right? Which is really, it's validating in some way, but gives us real strategic direction, right? And this is aggregated across all of our customers, right? So we can look at it at a different level. It also allows us, and right, I presented this to our board last week, to go to the board and say, are we delivering value? Yes, right? Do your customers recognize this? Yes. Yes, I can always talk about it in the renewal motions. And yes, we have good renewal. Great. And they care about that. But they also want to know, are you doing the things in the intermediate level to give you proof, right? To allow you to have those conversations. I mean, there really isn't anything else like this in the market. Like, I show health regularly. Yep. That doesn't drive a lot of conversation. This drives conversation, right? And this what the health score is like my assessment. Yeah. I didn't manipulate. Right? Subjectivity in this at all. Yeah. So it's validating internally, it's validating externally. Like, so we found that our product and marketing is a huge opportunity, right? And what we're doing with Foresight beyond just the customer success notions.
Absolutely. And just a quick note, I think you're cutting out a little bit towards the end there. I'm not sure if it's on my side or your side, but I think whenever you come closer, it's a little bit more clear, but just letting you know. Cool. So let's go to the final piece of the puzzle here, which is, wrapping all this up into the key value drivers for Rohirrim, right? And what were the outcomes that ultimately this helped you achieve and drive for the organization? And so what I want to talk about here is impact and the before and after of Foresight. So let me leave the screen, stop the screen share here, and we can just talk through some of this stuff for the final few minutes. Is, there's been a lot that we've discussed right now, and the slides that you showed have been awesome to paint the picture of tracking value realization over time, to be able to quantify the value impact of core use cases for your solution for key customer touch points, connecting with executive buyers and showing the granular data of connecting product usage and value, and showing where there might be needs to prioritize efforts with certain users over others. And the final piece is wrapping all this up for the market and to be able to have cross-functional conversations with product and marketing and all of that. So I want to talk about, in your mind, if you could sum up what impact this engagement is having on your team's performance, right? And for you as a leader, as a VP running this team, how would you describe that? How would you describe that?
One of the biggest questions we've had early on, because we're a startup company and we're looking in with an entirely new product in a new market, right, where there aren't established benchmarks of success. The question has also always been, are you doing the right thing? Are you like 10 different directions you can go? How do you know you're on the right path? It's a question I ask my CSMs, it's a question I ask a lot by their executive team. There's lots of things to use to answer that question. This helps us deliver that answer. Are we on the right path? At the end of the day, all that matters Are our customers getting the value that they're with us, right? And this, yeah, lots of conversations of other things that we can do better and differently. Are we on the right path? Well, there is no set path ahead of us. Yeah, extremely validating. And it helps us understand that, like, yes, we're doing the right things. Within, one customer, where do we course correct? How do we course correct? Also gives us those early indications in a way that we can trust, right? And not just like doing one of these, which we often do, right? Like, I don't know. It gives us real proof points. Are we doing the right thing when there isn't a roadmap in front of us? That's been really big. It's been a big confidence for systems, including confidence just for us, and it helps us as a team coalesce around, like, where are we going? Are we going in the right direction? The answer is yes, and that helps us tremendously. And it's the confidence that we take the conversations we have with customers every single day.
It's so huge in forecasting. And I love how you said, where are we going, right? Are we on the right path? And the right path is being able to forecast with confidence, right? If we take this action, what's the anticipated result or the outcome? How do we think the customer is going to react to it? And to be able to have that foresight, right, into your world, like, that is hugely valuable. And so that's really where, we're seeing our best customers mature into a space where, I mean, honestly, you're leading the charge there, is helping guide your customers to the promised land of where they could be based off of what you're learning about their needs and their outcomes, and being on the same path with them, and ultimately being able to guide your team effectively to know, like, hey, we are on the right path. Here's why, right? Here's what we're doing to be on the right path with every single customer. I love it. Awesome. Well, we're wrapping up our webinar here, folks. This has been an incredible conversation. If there's any final questions, this is your chance to jump in, leave a comment or question. We've got Andrew and all of his expertise here for the next minute or so. So let us know if you've got anything. If not, Andrew, is there anything that you'd want to share as a closing thought or a parting thought here?
Just that anyone on the line, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking about this, obviously. Love talking about customer success and values. So if you have any questions about this or anything else we're doing, don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. Tomorrow, next week, next year, open invitation. Be a friend, don't be a stranger.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to close with this as a call to action for folks who want to keep the conversation going. Give me 1 second. I will share the final slide here, which is a QR code of our resources. So if you are interested in embedding a value framework for your organization, if you're interested in getting certified on how to do that, we offer courses every other month. If you're interested in receiving our newsletter, we call it the Value Lab, which this webinar is an extension of, right? Our Value Lab series where we share best practices in thought leadership. Please scan this QR code, fill out the quick form, let us know what you're interested in, and then we will be in touch with any or all of those resources. Our commitment to this industry and to post-sales and to SaaS is to really curate a community of thought leaders like Andrew, right? You heard from him that he's here to help and here to engage with folks who are wanting to take the next step in their careers, but also their companies. We're part of that mission as well. And part of that journey for us is to create the community where people can have a safe space to talk about this stuff, engage with peers, and really take the next steps in their careers. And as I'm showing this, we actually got a question that I want to bring on to the screen here. Let me show that. So thank you so much for your question here. And the question is, what role has data played in establishing this process? Was it primarily based on firsthand accounts and customer interactions, or were some models, frameworks established to leverage that effectiveness metric? It's a really good question, and if you want to take a first stab at that, go for it. Otherwise, I can.
Yeah, sure. So where we're using the data, like right now, is really sort of validating. Are we asking the right questions in our value assessment? Right. Our first stab at this, we had so few customers so early at this, we really relied on kind of the value propositions that we were taking to market to kind of create that value assessment. Now we're kind of looking back at this and being able to take sufficient data because we've got 75 to 85 to 100% of user responses, we've got data to tell us, are we even asking the right questions? Where else can we pivot in this? And so now we're able to use the data to evaluate the questions, whereas before that was sort of the challenge. Where do you start when you don't have anything? And so now the data really validates that. It's really helpful for us to continue to make decisions, refine what we're doing, as opposed to creating from scratch.
Yeah, it's great thoughts there, and to build onto that. So it all starts with a framework and having a perspective on how do we need to identify the core pillars of the value framework. And if you want to sign the QR code and join our next course, you'll get a deep dive into this. But there's 3 pillars: value, drivers and business outcomes, core workflows, and then use cases. So Foresight worked with Rohirrim and Andrew and his team to document all this stuff. And then, as he mentioned, the assessments were a great way to capture it. And then to your final point there, the volume of data we've gotten back from customers, anecdotal as well as quantitative, on their experiences with your solution, but also the questions, informs the next iteration, right, of the value framework. We're talking about the DNA is going to evolve and adapt, and go through mutations, like positive mutations of the DNA. But ultimately, we're leveraging the customer feedback and voice of customer to drive that next iteration, which is
It gives us the confidence in the feedback, right? When we have enough data points, we know that we're asking the right thing, or we know we have confidence in the decisions we're making on it. So that's been a critical element to us with this.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the question. I hope that answered it. If you have more
Mhm.
questions, please send them in. We'll give everybody one more minute to do it in case there's any other folks who want to get some questions answered. But I'll just give you a shout out, Andrew, in the comment as well. You got Andrew's fantastic comment. So great job, man. Thank you so much for being on today and sharing your wisdom, and also being a great customer of Foresight, and helping us to grow as well. I think a big part of this process for us, we're also in our I would say first few innings of life here as a company, is to constantly be improving and to constantly be pushing the boundaries and innovating. And that can only be possible with folks like yourself, who are helping us to become better every single day and energizing us and bringing the energy on webinars like this. So thank you so much, man. This has been super awesome for us. And I'm sure whoever watches this,
it's been a great partnership.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, on that note, we will wrap it up here, and the stream will be available for everybody on LinkedIn. It will be on YouTube as well. And I'll also post a link to the sign up page here in the comments. So if you couldn't join, but you want to join the next cohort or the next webinar, you will absolutely be able to do that. All righty. Well, Andrew, thanks so much again. This has been awesome. And we'll close it here.
Thanks, Tiger. Thanks so much, everybody.